What's up? My name is Danny Suede. Today I'm in the clouds with Brandon Burgan, and this one's a doozy. If you're new here, I read the Bible this year, cover to cover, front to back, and I was doing a lot of researching, studying, watching debates, just all year long, trying to figure out what's up with this thing. And you might have noticed that there is a resurgence of religion and people going to the church, right? Rejoining church, finding Jesus, and religion. It's kind of starting to make a comeback. And I want to just set you up for this conversation I had, because if you just start watching it, you probably won't get it fully what we're talking about. But to go back to this resurgence, it's basically a counterculture, right? My brother brought up this point to me where 20 years ago, the counterculture was this like punk, grunge, secularism. I think people were going to church and Jesus was broadly accepted in these ideas. And I think a lot of people, me included at that time, rejected that because it didn't make a lot of sense. It put a lot of limits on your life. Like, well, why can't I do this? I want to do that and blah, blah, blah. And it just didn't make a lot of sense. And I think a lot of people just kind of went punk mode. And now I think the secularism and that way of living has kind of failed. And I think left a lot of people with a meaning crisis. And they're all running back to the church. And there's another counterculture, which is Jesus in the church, that's happening right now. I think a byproduct of this is that people like me are noticing this and going, maybe I'll revisit these ideas, right? And reading the Bible and going to church and seeing what's up. But again, finding issues, right? People are like me and many other people are going, and like this guy I've just had the conversation with, Brandon, they're going, this doesn't all vibe. This doesn't all make sense. This doesn't all work. This can't be it, right? And out of this confusion and cognitive dissonance has emerged a new kind of philosophy that actually I think is old, but it's becoming popular again, which is this universal consciousness theory. I've heard it called God consciousness. I've heard it called Jesus consciousness. Weirdly, it's if you take away all the other Bible besides what Jesus says, it's really in line with Jesus's teachings. And there's a common thread through most religions that kind of all amalgamate in this universal consciousness idea. And I could rant about it for a long time, but I'll give you a basic synopsis before we get into the interview, which is the idea that God, or what we call God, or what has been known as God and understood as God, is a universal consciousness, right? All of our consciousness basically goes back up into this big pool of consciousness, and we're all connected through it, right? So you have this big pool of consciousness, and some of it flows into me, some of it flows into you, some of it flows into everything. And that giant amalgamation of all that is God, is what we call God. And I'm new to this theory, so I don't know exactly the properties of that, how that operates. But for me, conceptualizing God in that way answers a lot of the questions that I've had about God and religion in the Bible. And given Jesus' teachings, it's really in line. Like Jesus says these things like, whatever you do to the least of these, you do to me, right? How is that? How can that be a thing? That's basically saying whatever you do to this person, you're doing to Jesus. Well, if that's because Jesus, given this universal consciousness thing, Jesus is connected to them, right? You do it to them, you're doing it to him, because it's all going to the same place. You're me and I'm you. I know that probably sounds crazy and blasphemous and heresy. Heresy alert. Heresy alert. Anyways, the more I've explored that idea and heard about it, the more it makes sense to me. And I'm really starting to like it. And it changes the way I live, and it changes the way I look at other people. And this morning, I got a message from this dude that I'm about to interview. I told him about this idea, right? And he's like, dude, I've been thinking about that, and like it's changing the way I view everyone. It's crazy. And he's a Christian. And so I was like, let's rip a conversation. So we just kind of go in and are exploring this conversation to see how it jives with the Bible and God and the traditional view of God, and where it lines up and where it doesn't, and just exploring it. So hopefully you can just open your mind and look at it for what it is. Obviously, both of us are ding-dongs. We're not biblical scholars. We're not highly educated on these things. We're just exploring and trying to figure out what's going on in this crazy world. Anyways, it was an awesome conversation. I love this dude to death. He's one of my best friends, and I think it's a cool conversation. So yeah, enjoy and leave your thoughts in the comments. And here we go. This is Brandon Burgan. Brother, here's the idea. We've both been thinking about this universal consciousness theory, right? And basically what I want to try to hash out is how it conflicts and the issues it has with like your view of God and your experience and your conceptualization of God, like where it's incompatible and where there's issues. I definitely have some. and also kind of how it corresponds with the Bible, which we could take both sides of it. But for me, when I think of the Bible, right, I've come to a point where I don't think the Bible is 100% true and accurate, right? I think that there's a lot of good stuff in there, but at the end of the day, I think it's humans trying to figure out this thing about life we call God that's like in this unknown space that we can't measure and we don't know what's up. And there's something there, we don't know what it is, and then the Bible is like an attempt at like reaching that and like interfacing with that. And I think it makes points of contact, right? I don't think it doesn't hit it, but I think it's there in some ways, not in other ways. And overall, I think of it like I read this book about a brain surgeon, and he talks about like doing a brain surgery with this lady where he's trying to get a tumor, and he has to figure out which parts of the brain to cut through to get the tumor. And it's like the language parts of her brain. So he'll like zap a part and see if she can talk. And then she can either speak English or Spanish, and he'll zap a part and then her Spanish goes away and she can't talk Spanish. And then he'll poke another part and her English goes away, but she can speak Spanish. And so he's like mapping out, okay, which parts of this brain are what we need and what we don't, so that we can get to this point, right? I don't know if that makes sense, but I feel like that's what I want to do with the Bible, where I'm like, there's somewhere I'm trying to get, which is like the truth of reality, right? What's the accurate way to conceptualize God or whatever consciousness is going on, and what parts, and the Bible's like the brain. It's like, what parts can we cut through? What parts can we get out of here? What parts jive? What don't? And also, like in terms of the Bible, what parts work, and just your own experience and beliefs. So that's a bit of a wind up and a little crazy, but if you want to just take it from there, like as you've been thinking about this theory, which I shot over to you like a couple of days ago, where do you think it doesn't line up, or it doesn't fit with the way you think of God or the way you experience God?
Well, I just want to start by saying, bad news. I'm not very useful to you in this conversation because I'm not like a biblical scholar, and I basically live my whole life on how it feels. So like in my like my religious and my like, I would say kind of anti-religious beliefs, but also like in my relationship with God, everything is based on feeling my way through it. Cause I kind of liken it to a darkened, like a black room, and all you can do is use your senses, but like your main, cause like humans, our primary sense is vision, but it's like that one's gone. So it's like you're just always trying to figure out what something is without actually having the senses fully to like interact with it or understand it. And part of my experience is like a frustration of only having 5 senses, because it doesn't seem like we were equipped with the tools to really even answer the question that we're getting at. So for me, I just, I have a couple of crazy stories, things that have happened to me that give me, for one, it points me toward like almost like it would be impossible for me to deny the existence of something outside of our experience. Like in the same way that people would see lightning off in the sky 1,000 years ago and be like, that's Thor. It's like, I feel like I'm 1,000 years ago, but in a different way. And so like nowadays, without having the freaking lightning rod or like a transformer and a dam that we figured out how to generate the electricity, I'm still trying to describe the lightning bolt, and I'm calling it Thor. My premise, or like my foundation for me, like going to church and reading the Bible and asking like, cause one thing about me, for anyone that doesn't know me, is that I run a company with people over in Pakistan, and that's like my main team, and they're Muslim. So for me, I'm always asking them about their faith. And then I got like a dude who licensed one of my other companies, and he lives down in Utah, so we know what religion he is. And so I'm like always asking what like their faith is, because I'm ultimately trying to figure out, without the tools to really understand it, I feel like I'm trying to figure it out as close as I can, but I've also given up on completely understanding it. Yeah. And so that's where the universal consciousness theory that you brought up, I was reflecting on this morning and I sent you a voice note, and I think that's why we're here, is because I'm like, I don't think that it has to be mutually exclusive, that you can like believe in God and also assimilate God into like an understanding of us being created in his image, and that being sort of like the best experience or the best way of conveying an idea that being in God's image, but we also are an expression of God, therefore part of God. And like, I'm thinking in this like really like progressive way, and you have to go there in order to entertain these ideas. So I'm just going out there and I'm thinking like, what if this was true?
Yeah, dude.
And so like I'm thinking, and I'm like, well, like, you know, people are writing and not everyone's as good at communicating, and I feel like I probably suck at getting this thought through too. But when God says we're created in their image, I mean, for one, it's plural, so that's kind of weird, you know, and people say that that's like the Trinity and whatever, but people, I think, don't really even understand what the Trinity is in general anyway. And then it's like created in their image. It's like, well, does God literally have biceps, or like, does God have a consciousness? And I started thinking, I'm like, it's probable to me that there isn't some like freaking giant dude standing over the earth, and like with everything we know of space and time and all these things, it's like probably not a guy with thumbs, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, in his image, it makes more sense that like the conscious experience we're having is similar to that of God, right? But then the universal conscious thing that you said, from my understanding, is like God is having an experience through every single person. And that makes way more sense to me, because he doesn't like they, them.
They, them.
No offense, God. Like, I have a genuine fear of like going against the big man, but
I gotta we could go on that too. Dude, you've opened 1,000 cans of worms right there. Right.
I know.
And okay, so if I can butt in here, the first thing I'll say is I will have in the intro of this caveated that we're just ding dongs pontificating
Ding dong.
God, right?
Yeah.
So I know we're not biblical scholars, whatever, right? But you know, we look into it, we think about it, we care about it. It's not, you know, we could speak what we think, but yeah, we're not necessarily experts. So I will have caveated that we're astronauts out here exploring these ideas, but. One thing I would say, when you talk about God, us being made in God's image, right? I think you could chalk that up to, one, you could say, oh yeah, maybe it's talking about consciousness, like we're made in God's image in that we're conscious and a part of him in that way. But I think too, especially with the Old Testament, I think there's just a lot of fluff where people are personifying God and making things up and saying things about him. Mm-hmm. To understand it, so they could understand it. Like they didn't have any science or like really philosophy or anything back then. So it's like, I think a lot of that stuff, it's sometimes, at least for me, I'm so conditioned the way I was raised that everything in the Bible is true. Like the Bible is the perfect word of God. It's 100% inspired by him. It's 100% true. There's nothing wrong about it, right? And I just think if you forget that and you just look at it objectively, that's not the case, right? And I don't think that the Bible's not amazing or incredible or pointing to right things. I'm not just saying the Bible's just total BS made up, but I don't think it's, for lack of a better term, Bible, right? It's just like not all right. And so I think to a certain degree, I'm at a position where I'm trying to figure out what is legit and what is making contact with reality and what is not. And I do think a lot of it is making contact with reality, but what is metaphor and what is not is hard to figure out, you know, and it's just not that easy. And to go back to the other thing you said, where is universal consciousness, the idea of universal consciousness and the idea of God mutually exclusive? I don't think so. The theory is that universal consciousness is what God is, right? Mm-hmm. And I do think that does pose some problems with traditional Christianity and theology. And for me, kind of one of the main problems, which I think we touched on when we talked before, is this idea of absolute omnipotence and power and all-knowing and everywhere and all the time and fully, omnipotent and omnipotent, right? This idea, I don't think jives with the universal consciousness theory fully, right? And also, it in a lot of ways, I think, contradicts the idea of God being all love, like perfect love and perfect whatever. And funny enough, you mentioned this. You're like, I have fear of the big man, right? You're like, hope I don't say anything wrong. I'm scared, right? This is another way that the Bible contradicts itself, in my opinion.
Massively.
And I have yet to look into this further, but you hear the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. Fear God, right? You're supposed to fear God, blah, blah, blah. Well, I was reading in 1 John, and there's this whole thing about perfect love casts out fear. There can be no fear in love because blah, blah, blah. And John goes on this thing about how fear and love can't vibe. So I'm supposed to love God as the main commandment, but I'm also supposed to fear God. But there's no fear in love, right? So how can God love and be feared? And like that shit just doesn't, there's so much of that in the Bible because in my opinion, the apostles and a lot of the people who wrote a lot of the Bible they're doing what we're doing. They're trying to figure it out and they're trying to put shit together.
Exactly.
And it's like they didn't clock the entire Bible and like make sure the shit they were pontificating about was exactly accurate and philosophically coherent with the whole thing.
I think they were smart dudes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
like that's what they were doing was they were pontificating and like none of them went to college.
Yeah.
But like it's I would say like that's kind of where my like Christian walk is very different than most, is that like I don't view the Bible as like I don't worship it. I don't like hold the Bible up here. I'm like, it's a tool. For me, the Bible is a tool to read from other like prophets or super intelligent or well experienced, or even just the collection of experiences over a long period of time. It's just like a great resource. So it's a tool to like kind of understanding ultimately God. And that's where I would say that universal consciousness theory kind of lines up with my experience of reading about other people's experience of God. Like I was talking about in the Genesis story, but
so where does it not line up for you, right? The way you think of God, imagine there's this giant pool of consciousness, call it God. We're all connected to it. We're all part of it. It's all one thing. We're in it. And maybe the point of that is murky. Maybe it's so that God can experience himself. So he wants to experience everything from every angle, exploratory, right? It may be that thing we were talking about where for some reason or another, the goal is to fill that pool up with as much love as possible. And then once it gets to a certain frequency or level of whatever, right, experience charged into it, the idea is we're essentially being farmed, like love and positivity is being farmed into this thing for some cosmic reason we don't understand.
Let me, can I say something?
Yeah, go.
This is all just like my own experience, just a crazy thing. But I've also noticed that a lot of people have had experiences similar to mine, which is why I think it's not super crazy. But a lot of people, when they do mushrooms or like LSD or they go crazy on those things, they have an experience which ultimately led me to believe that there's a God, because I felt like a battery. Do you remember me saying that to you? Yeah.
Do batteries have feelings?
Do batteries have feelings? Yeah, that's like a freaking classic Brandon.
Does battery know it's a battery?
Yeah. And but dude, you're talking about filling up something, right? Like the reason why I feel like the senses we have aren't capable of understanding like the relationship we're in to God is because like we just don't understand what's behind the conscious layer. But I did feel like that there was this like I'm a battery and I can produce a ton of energy through negativity because negativity fuels energy. It's almost like the cold. It's like,
I think it's the opposite.
No, it's both.
Positivity is radiating, negativity is sucking in.
No, but it's like
retracting.
It's a result of so energy is created, like in my experience when I was like thinking about this and I was tripping, so take it with a grain of salt, but like I could create a ton of energy in you by inflaming your self. I could get you to go nuts, right? If I just started talking shit to you and blah blah blah, I'd create a lot of energy. Okay. And that energy was like a super hot, super quick, almost like just like it's unsustainable, useful for a second, and then it's gone to whatever is behind the conscious veil.
Okay.
For me, the thing that was like the equivalent of nuclear energy for us is like, that's what love is. And so like that's what, and I in my idiot human brain, I'm like, it's a spaceship behind the conscious layer, but that's the only thing I can liken it to. But something's moving and it needs energy, and the sustainable energy is love, and it's connection, and it's like, and it's helping and elevating. That creates just consistent, it's like steady blood sugar.
Yeah.
But the freaking sugar hit is like, what if I were to talk shit to you? Like, I'm gonna get energy stored,
Yeah.
but it's like almost the feeling was like it spiked your insulin, and then afterwards you're lower than where you started.
Yeah. Dude, okay, let me riff on that, because I think that's it's a really good point, because dude, that guy Aaron Abke that I sent you, that dude,
I need to watch his stuff.
He conceptualizes this exact same thing, right? And he says that the way he conceptualizes it's very interesting, because he says that there are emotions and states that are positive, right? He kind of says, go forget right and wrong, right? Or like good and evil, right? It's positive and negative polarity, right? So positive is radiating, right? So it's outward energy, right? And that mainly could be love, happiness, joy. But like you said, it could be hate, anger. These radiate, right? But they're potent. And they're somewhere on the radiating spectrum. And yeah, maybe that fuels the ship a little bit. But then on the other side, you have the opposite of love, which is arguably fear, right?
Mm-hmm.
And fear and anxiety, and it's a negative inward polarized thing, right? It sucks energy out of the shit, right? It takes energy, it drains, right? It's like cold, like you're saying, it's the opposite of heat is like energy, cold is like the absence, right? It's like a inward thing. And I think this is why the Bible, when it's so obsessed with love, right? Love God, love others, show love, blah, blah, blah. God is love, da, 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 right? That's the greatest good. Well, what's the most common commandment in the Bible to not do? The most common commandment ever. Don't fear, right? Fear, it's not don't hate, right? It's don't fear, because that's the opposite of love, right? It's like, if you think of it in terms of polarity of radiating versus not, right? And so like, I don't know. I think that makes so much sense to me. I'm like, bro,
are you saying that fear is the most like frequent like command?
Yeah,
there's
like no other
suggestion?
It's the most common command in the Bible.
Most common.
Do not fear. Yeah, there's no other command as much as that.
Cool. Okay.
Do not fear, do not fear, do not fear, do not fear. The whole Bible, bro.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think it's by a long shot.
Because when Jesus was asked, though, he said, "Love God and love others."
Yeah, it's not the greatest commandment. It's just
okay.
The most reoccurring commandment. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, bro, because we intuitively have this sense that like as a common collective of humanity. Right? The common wisdom of humanity has offered to us this idea over and over again. Do not be afraid, 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 right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, with that anthill analogy, it's like humans, in the same way a spider knows how to do a spider web, and the same way ants know how to build an anthill somehow, and like orchestrate all where the food is and where the ventilation is and where the tunnels go and how to do it, right? Humans collectively, with that same kind of phenomenon, have come up with these concepts of love God and love others, and we're all connected, bro. It's crazy. It's like brothers and sisters in Christ. It's like that idea that there's this one consciousness and we're all connected to it is totally biblical, and it vibes with the idea of like reincarnation and Buddhism. Mm-hmm. And I have yet to look into Hinduism and stuff like that, but I think it's probably in there as well, right? And it's obviously in Islam, because Islam rocks with the Bible. And Mormonism also rocks with the Bible. Mm-hmm. And it's funny, even Mormonism has the idea that we're gods, that we were gods before we were here and stuff like that, right? Like that to me, that still works, right? Because if there's this giant pool of consciousness when a baby gets born, part of that consciousness that's already chilling just goes zoot into the baby. Yeah. And part of that consciousness technically was a god or part of God before. So it's like kind of pointed in the right direction. But like, to get back to the initial premise, right? What's wrong with the idea? Like if we're sitting here, we're going, I want to chop that idea at the knees. Because to me, I'm so stoked about it, because I'm like, bro, with Christianity, for example, or the Bible, there's all these problems that come up for me with it, right? even just the idea of God needing, like, why did he create anything? It's like he needs us. He needs a relationship with us. What, is he lonely? Why does he want people? Like, what is even that? Just none. There's all this contradiction and shit that philosophically doesn't make sense to me, right? As
That would be,
Bible.
that's like what comes to mind for me is like what doesn't map
Yeah.
is like, because if God is the creator of the universe and that's how you would define him, or like, the origin point or the thing outside of time, I got a few ideas. It's like, I guess it could coexist. I always think about coding, and making an app. And like, if I were the master architect and I knew all the libraries and directories and like all the things, if you're not a coder, it's just like, your way around you can hold up a map and see where it's at, And that's like what God, if he's the creator, has an ultimate view of. He's like, he knows how to get to this point and he knows why this point thing happens. It's like the part that doesn't really line up for me, but it doesn't mean it's not true. It's just that I haven't, thought about this long enough. I've literally known about this for like 5 days.
Yeah.
But it's like the idea is, so without going down free will and determinism, I tend to believe, like, the Bible says that the war is already won. That's like a common belief among Christians, is like God wins anyway. And it's like, okay, well then determinism, not free will.
Yeah.
Period. So
That's hard.
there could be a mixture of both. I don't want to go too far into it, but I just imagine, like, what if there's a river flowing, somebody's on the boat, your ability to walk inside the boat is still capable, but overall the story still moves this direction. That might be our expression of free will, is our ability to move around on the boat, but the overall flow of the river still goes in God's direction. Okay.
Yeah.
The determinism idea for me is like, I'm going the way I'm going, and I have stories to back this up. Like, you can't even refute the freaking thing I told you on the last podcast. I projected my life a year in advance, and I was single, totally against dating a mom or even talking to a mom, whatever. Then a year later, after I had sent my visualization to my friend, that next year I had told her that I visualized it and I had a blonde 5-year-old son, and I kissed my wife on the lips, and then I walked down on stage. So I'm like, determinism for me is just like the only thing that really makes sense. And like, my relationship to that can change. But the thing that I have a problem with this theory is like, because I do have that crazy potent experience with determinism, something has to be able to manipulate like the trees. Because my example of like being deterred from my path is that if it's just up to a human, this can be totally broken apart actually, now that I think about it. But I'm on my way to go on a hike, and then I'm like, I get to, maybe 2 miles out from where I want to start my hike, and there's a tree that fell across the road, and it's the only road to the origin of the hike. My decision, based on how much energy I have that day, is going to be either to turn around or just like start my hike 2 miles early. And like, God knowing, being a part of my consciousness, your consciousness, all these consciousnesses, could have that information reasonably, and then like, I'm either going to go on the hike or not. And so like, the control aspect for me is one thing that I have a trouble with, like, kind of conceptualizing, is like, is God in control, or like, is he just in most control? Like, is he mostly in control?
I mean, dude, if gun to my head, I wouldn't think of it like control or not. I would think of it like, because in my head with this theory, right, this pool of consciousness, right, maybe that's God, but God maybe's outside of that. So there's still this universal consciousness dynamic, and there's something outside of that even, which if you get into Genesis, right, where you have like the Most High, and then you have like Yahweh under that and the council and whatever, it's like, maybe that's the vibe, is that there's like universal consciousness, which we think is God, and interacts with us as God, but there's even Most High creator God outside of that, right? I don't know. Right. But this thing with free will, I feel like most people have a problem because it makes their life meaningless if shit's determined. It's like, well, why do I have an experience of choosing things, and what's the point of life if everything's just going to happen, right? Think of a movie, right? And I think this universal consciousness version of God is how he is the way he's interacting with reality and our lives and the world, is that when you go see a movie, the movie's already made. What's going to happen in the movie is going to freaking happen, right? But it's still exhilarating, right? It's still,
even when you watch it the second time.
Exactly. Even if you watch it the second time. But I'm saying God might be watching it the first time. And maybe this is designed and everything's determined and it's going to rock how it's going to rock and going to roll out how it's going to roll out. But he wants to be in wants to see it from every angle and explore it and see how it feels. Like, what does it feel like when this happens from this person? And when this person, what does that feel like? And what's it like, blah, blah, blah. And all this together. And you don't need free will for that to be exciting and interesting. And even for you, like,
well, I think it scares a lot of people too.
It is scary,
but it's not because if you really think about it and like, if it's already written and it's already, cause your example on that last podcast was like, what if I get ass cancer and I have in a year from now and I find out? Yeah. It's like, well, you probably won't find out anyways, cause we don't really get privy. We don't have that access. We don't get to know the future. And so even if it's written, it's like, you don't know it anyway. So like, don't let it freak you out.
But maybe you can.
Huh?
Right? Maybe.
Well, I did get a glimpse.
That's what I'm saying.
But I don't think it's common.
Like, dude,
it's not common.
Well, yeah, fair enough.
Every time I say that, people don't believe me. And I'd have to show them the audio recording with the timestamps and then like show them pictures and line up my life and be like, here it is.
Yeah. I mean, dude, it's crazy. You can probably contest this, but Candace Owens talks about how Charlie Kirk talked about he knew he was going to die young and probably get killed, right? Like he had a feeling.
But that's an educated guess.
Well, okay, depending on how he talks about it like he knew, right? Like It's his destiny, which whatever, I don't know. And like I said, dude, if this thing is determined and it's like a book, right? It's like a movie or a book. It's already here. And maybe you can get a glimpse of a couple pages ahead and maybe it's horrible. And the thing is though, it's the same thing as the normal idea of God, which I think people get peace from, is like, well, you go to heaven in the end, right? And it's going to be fine in the end, no matter what you have to go through. Mm-hmm. I think same thing with this, right? It's like, if you just end up getting sucked back into that universal consciousness and you're one with everything, and you're going to be like, the ass cancer sucked, but whatever, like, it's fine.
Right.
And no matter what happened to you, like the worst human experience you could possibly have compared to the whole pool of all the love, right? It's like just not going to compare. And it's philosophically similar to the idea of heaven. And,
right.
I had a DMT experience where I felt like that, right? And I forget who I was listening to recently who described their DMT experience, which was so similar to mine. And I was like, holy shit. I think it was Rogan, actually. And Rogan was on a podcast talking about it. But like, dude, I blasted it and I just was one with everything, bro. I wasn't me. I wasn't Dan. The concept of the world, like Earth and like people and anything, it was just like a little it was like and I was just everything. I was just floating in the universe of everything, and I could see my vision and awareness. Like, I think I say vision, but it was like awareness was every direction, every location. It was just one big thing of everything, and it was of my life. That experience, that little blip of experience, was the most peaceful, blissful, transcendent experience I've had by a long shot. Nothing even compares to it, right? That experience that I had on DMT. And I think that might have been some way of me just tapping into what it's like to be that thing. And the idea of human suffering mattering at all in any way in that state is just inconceivable. It's just literally inconceivable.
Yeah, it's an inconvenient thing. And like, a lot of people's issue with God is that bad things happen on Earth. Yeah. And in some people's conscious experiences, they have to do and go through things that just suck.
Yeah.
And I would say that does suck. And like, with all the like empathy in the world for people who have addiction issues, or like they didn't have parents and they just feel like they're behind, or like those things, they do suck, but you don't know. I mean, even if determinism was real, you don't know the end of your story. And so like the hope and the faith and everything in overcoming those things, your story actually is probably, in my, like, I would guess it's probably a story of like victory, and you can overcome these things. And because I truly think like you stick around long enough, you can figure it out. It's just that people, end up going early sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, even if you have a shit life and just die and there's no really redemption arc, if you just get sucked back into that pool of love, you're not gonna
That's what
care.
I'm saying.
Yeah, it's like the universe doing a cold plunge, right?
Yeah.
It's like God or the universe. It's like, I just want to see what this is like. Maybe I live this horrible, torturous, terrible life, but on the grand scheme of things, when it's all said and done at the end of the thing, it was a little cold plunge, right? And
Yeah,
you're
but
gonna
it's also,
feel like that at the time.
that's so like theoretical, but also like kind of takes away the actual experience consciously of the person who is the cold plunge experience, because like that would still suck. So I guess along the lines of like fear, of things being determined, if you think your determined outcome is just bleak and it sucks, I would never want someone to believe that, because it's not necessarily even true. So I think that part of the reason why you fear it, like what you said, is because you get ass cancer and then you end up like super, sick or whatever, and it's a year out and you'd be like, fuck, but you don't know if you get the ass cancer and then it goes away and then you get a platform because you survived ass cancer and you're preaching people on stages and you're changing their lives and inspiring them, and now all of a sudden you got this huge platform, you're friends with all the best people in the world, and got massive influence, you die and people all cry when you die. That's like the whole point, right? Yeah. So like, same thing. I would
say be hopeless if things are shit.
No, it's not hopeless. And so that's, I think, like the function of faith while holding determinism in the same body. It's like both hands can hold it. And I got this idea of like determinism being a thing, but also like faith is also a thing. And I think faith is kind of that moving function where it's like, my buddy calls it believing action. It's like faith is the thing that allows for action at all, because without faith, you wouldn't even leave your bedroom. You'd be like, nah. So like if you got faith that it's going to be okay, you probably walk down the stairs. If you didn't think you could walk down the stairs at all, you probably wouldn't do it, because you don't know the outcome of walking down those stairs. So it does require a level of faith in yourself to go down the stairs. And so everyone's got this basic layer of faith, but some people have more and some people have less. And so some people end up making more out of their life because they find more faith. They have more faith in themselves. They have more faith in their ability to like deal with hard circumstances or to problem solve or overcome or blah, blah, blah. And that is like, doesn't even require for you to believe in like Sky Daddy God,
Yeah. Well, okay. You know how the Bible says, basically, what is it? Blessed are the poor in spirit or whatever. And that kind of idea, like, hey, the people who are down and out bad and the people that are fucked, right? Mm-hmm. They're blessed. And like, he kind of prioritizes and like puts a kind of special aura around people that are soft, like, poor and broke and not vibing, right? Sick mm-hmm. and all that. So imagine what you're saying is true. Like if you're one of those people that your life's shit and you find a way to turn it around and like smile through the pain and like make the positive out of it and help people or turn it around somehow, right? Mm-hmm. Even if it's at the last minute. Think of how much more of the positivity, good vibes you're putting back into that pool and that will reverberate when you're gone. Versus if you're just having a good time and life's good, right? If you're having a good time and life's good, you're probably putting some sauce into the pool. But imagine you get, your legs chopped in ass cancer and you find a way to smile through and inspire a bunch of people and die and leave a legacy of that inspiration and love and mm-hmm. positivity. You're having a way bigger impact towards the pool. And if that's the reality, it makes sense why Jesus would say something like that. Like, blessed are the poor or whatever in spirit or whatever. So I've heard arguments about that.
Nick Vujicic. I'm just Googling it right now. Nick Vujicic. I don't know. He's the guy without limbs,
Yeah.
Seemingly the most unfortunate life, right? Exactly. But look at it.
Filling the pool, baby.
Freaking filling it, dude. And he's speaking in arenas and he's like giving people perspective on like, he's like literally like wobbling around the stage and he's like, you think your life sucks?
Yeah.
My life when I was 4. And he's like going on his conscious experience journey and sharing it with you. And you're like, well, it's not that.
That's what I'm saying. That concept we're talking about, it vibes with a biblical.
I would say Holmes living a good life.
Yeah, you can harmonize it with the idea that are in the Bible to some degree. It's not perfect, but it like, to me, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Right? That makes sense, right? It's like, I can get behind that, and that it doesn't seem crazy when you get to this thing of God needing to sacrifice Jesus for your sins and that whole shit. It's like, what the fuck?
I'm just going to say that, like, I'm not going to oppose any of that. So there'd be a better conversation with somebody who thinks that the Bible is the perfect word of God.
Yeah.
Because I don't.
Yeah.
So, like, because my belief is that it's the inspired word of God. So, like, there's truth in it. It is to be dug. You have to be out there with a shovel, and you got to be sifting through, and you got to be learning, and you got to be trying to translate, and you got to work for that knowledge. I don't take it at face value.
Dude, okay, so I want to see what you think of this concept, because I was thinking about this today too, because when we were talking about Paul being sus, and you kind of you're reading and you get this like gut check about it, right?
Yeah.
You're like,
totally.
You get a little ping of like, that's not, something smells weird.
Me especially,
right?
I almost avoid it.
And I'm trying to, I'm trying to think about that concept. And I've heard other people say that, and interestingly, I'm pretty sure the Bible reinforces that. Like I remember you telling me there's something in the Bible about discernment where like God gives you discernment of how to read the scriptures and how to do it, right? Or like how to think about it. And I know there are concepts of discernment in the Bible like that. And I had that same kind of ping experience of shit. And maybe that is a metaphysical situation that can happen sometimes where, God or the universe or the consciousness or whatever, like when you're doing the right thing or on the right path, or you're getting it, right? You're getting the idea of it. It'll give you a little boop. It'll give you a little ding. It's like, hey, just a little nudge. The thing is, the problem with that is I think you can get false nudges, because whatever that nudge is, it's just a matter of experience. It's a somatic feeling. It's your neurons firing. So theoretically, you would be able to trigger that kind of feeling wrongly, right? When you're not on the right path, or you're completely wrong about something. And that's why I think the LDS take advantage of this to a certain degree, because they have that burning in the bosom thing where if they like pray the right prayer, God will prove to them it's real, because they'll feel burning in their bosom.
One of my favorite jokes is that God's in the bass, It's like, it's funny because, when you're a musician, or like you produce music, like we do, then you understand it's like there's little tricks, and there's like you can pull out the bass and you can have it go whoop,
oh, God's
and
in the
people
bass.
get a feeling.
Yeah.
And so I'm in church on Sundays, and I'm like,
yeah,
stops the hat,
Yeah.
and then it's like a pause, and then and then kick and bam, and then everything comes
There's
in.
God.
I'm like,
God,
I'm like, here you are, Jesus.
Yeah. Dude, that's one of the things that got me, was part of my deconstruction, is when I used to play worship music, and everyone's got their hands up, oh,
because you're the drummer.
And then I would notice, even when I was at like metal shows, once I was touring and stuff, like they'd be like, kill everyone, and like it's the same thing happening to people, right? And I'm like, oh, it's just good chords, like it's just a beat and good chords. Yeah, whatever.
Well, God's in music. Like,
okay, well, I can show this on the stream what you put.
Oh, that's
First Thessalonians, test everything, hold fast what is good. This instructs Christians to examine teachings carefully rather than accept them. Yeah, so there you go. That's in the Bible. So, you got to test the ping, the little ping you get when you.
Yeah, and I forget what book it is, but it's like
Thessalonians.
Anyways, it literally says inspired word of God, and it's like people want to interpret things as like they, like it's perfect, but to me that's just like, okay, I mean it's inspired. It's like I'm inspired.
Yeah,
but I that thing you're saying where it's like, one thing I wanted to say about that thing you were talking about, I don't know how you'd explain it, but it's like the little like the nudge,
the ping.
That's what training your intuition is. That's like when you think that you're gonna, like you're playing poker and you're like, God, I think that 5 is coming. Yeah. It's like low odds, but you're training your gut, and then like the 5 doesn't come, you're like, that wasn't it.
Who's the guy who says my gut
in life
doesn't? There's a famous quote, and it's like the guy's like, my gut doesn't always lead me right,
but my spleen.
But my spleen, no, it's my gut doesn't always lead me right, or sometimes my gut leads me wrong, but it's the only thing that's ever led me right. Right. So it can be wrong.
Totally.
But when it's right kind of vibe. I have that experience as well.
Yeah, I've taken so many wrong paths, just like trying to find fulfillment. Like, let's just make it not about God or anything. But I'm like, my first 10 years, I'm 33, like from 20 to like 30, I was looking for fulfillment, trying to figure out what that even looks like, how to find it, what to get. And I would try so many different paths. And it's like the same thing. It's like, I was training my gut, and then eventually I finally found it, and I'm like, oh, I feel fulfilled. when I do well by other people. They're like, oh, that's
because
how
it's
you get it.
you. Yeah, it's you.
Mhm.
Isn't it crazy, dude? So about the ping, right? To me, when I first got this universal consciousness theory, I've heard it before, right? It's the idea of reincarnation. It's Jesus was saying this shit. That's the crazy thing. Is like I'd heard this idea and whatever, but I've never had it conceptualized to me in the way that I now understand it and internalize it, of you're me and I'm you and we're all one big thing. Like I've never heard it in a way that made sense. Now, once it made sense to me and it was put that way, it totally transformed my experience of other people, right? It totally transformed my waking sense of other people in my life. And it's like, and I got that ping, right? When I'm interacting with someone or I do something nice for someone or I connect with someone, right? I go, holy shit, that feels like it's right? It just has that ping. I'm like, wow. And I remember being in Thailand and I'm like walking around in the mall and I'm like, look at us, and I genuinely feel like it. Where I'm like, look at us, or like, look at me over there. Look at that guy smiling and me. Like, hell yeah, I'm happy over there. Like, fuck yeah. Like, it sounds crazy, but for me, when I really wrapped my head around it and I realized that this is the shit Jesus says, like, it's so crazy how he's like, when you do something to them, you're doing it to me and you're in me the same way I'm in the Father and we're all one. And it's like, he was saying that shit. And so I just go, damn. That makes sense. And it's just so much of the Old Testament makes sense in that lens. So much of the New Testament and these ideas. It's almost like when you look at all this through that lens of universal consciousness, the places where it got misconstrued and bastardized and twisted and misinterpreted become clear. It's like you can kind of see the golden thread that goes through everything and you can see where it veers off and doesn't vibe, right?
Well, in that little twinge or whatever where you like recognize truth, it's like the first recognition of truth is just a subtle little like tip to your gut where it's like, oh, I'm consistently like, I almost liken it to like hitting the driving range where it's like, for me, I suck at golf, but I finally just like kind of find that position where I go to drive and it goes 400 yards and I'm like,
oh yeah,
damn,
that was it.
And then you get up and you hit the ball again, another 400 yards. You're like, okay, something about my foot positioning, my body, I need to remember this,
Yeah.
That same feeling that happens when you get that twinge where you're like, in the last 5 days, since thinking about everyone as just a shared consciousness and I'm only part of it, and I'm technically connected to the same thing. It's almost like mushrooms underneath a yard. Where I'm like, okay, they're just me, but different. And then I'm talking to like my barista and I'm like, she's talking about her dating life or whatever. And she's struggling with giving it up too easy or something, and I'm like, my approach there was so different. It's like, I'm not giving advice. I'm not like telling her how to live either. I wouldn't, it's like the
You're helping
perspective.
yourself.
Yeah, it's like I just wanted to ask her questions that I might want to ask myself if I was struggling with some of the moral things that she's struggling with.
Yeah.
And I left that and I noticed that she's smiling. Yeah. She's like, okay, well, I'll see you next time.
It just
like,
works.
Like just
physical action works.
I'm hitting 400 yarders every time. And I'm talking to people at the gym, the guy behind the gym that greets me into the gym. I'm like, it's just a 400-yard freaking smash. And it's like the guy that's in the locker room or the guy asked to spot me. Like multiple of these things happen where my perspective and my positioning when I'm talking to another person is that they are just connected to the same kind of conscious thing I am. And so
it comes across,
they're me.
Comes across
400
subconsciously, right? It's like a person there's like a subconscious thing you pick up on, someone else picks up on you, right? Like, for example, if I'm interacting with someone and in my head I'm thinking they're me and I'm treating them like me and I'm thinking of them like they're me, like I'm in you, you're in me, we're the same thing, we're a team buddies, right? The way you come across when you're even if it's a normal interaction, like there's a element to it that I find makes my interactions way better, right? It's just like there's a thing to it. And this is a bit of a swerve, but in Christianity, a lot of times with homosexuality, there's like a fucking problem, right? There's a big problem with it. And I remember hearing this lady say that the first time she ever experienced God is when she kissed a woman, or maybe she had sex with a woman. I don't know, something like that. And, under a traditional idea of God and theology, that's a L, right? That's a big no. That's not gonna go. But if you think of it like we're the same person and they experienced love, even if it was lesbian, it's the same shit, right? And maybe that was the first time she experienced God. If what God is we're all connected, right? And there's so many things like that like given that context, it makes sense, and everything just like pops into place or like goes into place, like conceptualizing it that way. Yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's just weird. I'm like, so many things. But on that line, I think that the reason, if you go back to the Old Testament, right, and you look at all the laws, Leviticus and all this, and them trying to figure it out, I think it was still aimed at the same thing, right? It's like, imagine, for example, the idea of adultery and premarital sex and sex outside of marriage, and this thing that the church has this like kind of idea of how sex needs to be, like sex and marriage, and needs to be like within these parameters, right?
Yeah.
Imagine that given a specific culture and time, if you do engage in sex and love, romantic love outside those parameters, it's just most likely based on human instinct and human tendencies to fill the pool with more bullshit. There's going to be more conflict, heartbreak, pain, fighting, bullshit. So they say, listen, here's some strict frickin' parameters to not have that happen, right?
Yeah.
And it's aimed at that goal of just, people were basically dumb. They didn't know what the hell was going on. They had no science, technology, probably STDs and disease were insane. They had no contraception. So all this, there's all these reasons why it would be that strict.
Yeah, their false positive.
Cool.
Their false positive was the fact that disease went down when gay went down.
Yeah. Well, it might have actually just, if you just think of it in terms of the pool of consciousness having more love or more fear in it, it might have just been effective, right? If you do marriage and sex and love within this bounds, you get more positive vibes into the pool. But that's not to say that now that we're in that you can get in a time like now, and you don't have to follow that. You could have more sexual partners. You could have multiple marriages and families and still contribute to a more positive pool, because we have contraception and we have medicine and we know psychology and we have all these different ways of thinking and being. Part of the reason probably why they had polygamy back then, right? Because like you could do it, right? It's not about the rule. It's about how much love is getting in the pool. Bars.
Yeah.
I get it. And all the weird rules make sense in that way.
One thing that doesn't resonate with me is like truth is timeless. Truth is timeless. Truth isn't convenient. So like for me, I'm like, like if it was actually true that if you could have multiple relationships at different points in time and it was effective, but it wasn't at certain other times, it just probably isn't that's not the kind of truth I'm after. I'm after like the freaking it's just pure 100% truth.
Okay, think of it like this. Think of it like,
that's a relative truth.
Think of it like pork, right? Is it right or wrong to eat pork? Well, imagine if back then you would get all this disease and you would fill the pool with shit because there was no cure. Now that you can fix your disease and worms or whatever the fuck you get, and you can fix it like this and there's no pain and fear, it becomes okay to eat pork, right? So that rule, just was based on the consequences, but they're different consequences. Right?
They're different consequences.
Yeah. That's
what I still think the overall truth of not eating pork, this is fucking crazy. We're even talking about this, but I avoid pork. I'm actually one of those people because it does cause problems, and I have so many belly problems from eating pork and bullshit.
Okay, that's fair. But imagine in 20 years, once AI is in the medical field, it'll fix all that. Then it would be fine, right? There are things that are like that, right? Where an old rule was based in the way things used to be, and it's just not. It's not applicable anymore.
I mean, at the same time, though, I also at a baseline wouldn't just say that not eating pork is a truth. I'd say that's kind of a misfire.
Well, I feel like that you could say the same thing about the marriage rule.
So I guess there's different.
Because God condones polygamy, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like that. Did that change? Is polygamy okay still or not? Right?
Yeah, but I think that's one of those misfires where it's not fundamental truth. Because I'm down for the relative truth conversations, but I want the stuff that's timeless.
I don't know if that exists. Maybe it does, but I almost think
love does.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That
treating other people like you want to be treated. That does.
Okay. Hear me out. That would be the fundamental truth, but that's where it stops, right? Everything on top of that, Imagine imagine, like a sadist, right? Someone, or a masochist and sadist, right? Where if someone likes to get hurt and someone likes to hurt someone else, right? And imagine the perfect pair of that, right? Where there's this person who just likes to get hurt and there's another person who likes to hurt people, and they just have a perfect relationship of fucking each other up, and everyone's happy as shit. And it's love. It's true love, and everyone's happy, right?
I got you.
Right?
That's like conjecture. Because, I mean, I'm not saying that's not even probable, and I'm not saying that you can't have multiple partners and be happy and all that stuff. But for me, like, my pursuit isn't in relative truth. My pursuit is of the truth, which would be like the thing where you said is foundational. It's like, this is treat others as you want to be treated. That's foundational, but there's layers to it. And so that's like ultimately what our conversation we're having is.
Yeah, but I don't know.
Somehow connected to God.
I think there's some things, like aside, if you take that bottom layer of love, like love good, fear bad, right? Take that bottom truth, right?
Yeah.
Everything above that, I don't think it's absolute. I think there are some things that are maybe way more true, way more of the time, way more often, that are like absolutely very, very solid, and some things that are less solid, right? But I don't think anything above that layer is absolute. I think
that's a good way to put that.
And I think there's just some things where, hey, it's like an antibiotic, like a really good antibiotic, right? It's going to work 99% of the time.
Right.
Or like peanuts, right? Peanuts you can eat them 99.9% of the time. Some people, it's going to kill your ass, right?
Are peanuts good or bad?
Exactly.
Yeah,
so I think anything above that bottom line is like functioning in that realm where
it's like back to the gay thing. So I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
You're not like lobbying for any specific thing, but you're just like everything above that line. I totally agree. And that's funny that it's like I was kind of, contesting what you were saying, but ultimately we're in the same belief because like when I'm talking to anyone about how they live their life, I'm like, I don't know. I'm not you, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like for me,
and dude,
I could not imagine trying to balance a relationship with more than one woman. That would be multiple cycles. Like you're trying to, dude, so much work.
Yeah.
So, but like there's dudes out there that just like love that. They love trying to balance multiple relationships.
Well, and dude, culture, you got to remember, in a culture where that's normal and has been the norm, right? That's a completely different thing.
But also like gay too. It's like, if you ask me, you're like, if you're like, Brandon, you're a Christian, you don't like gay people. I'd be like, you're fucking high. I love gay people. I literally spent like years of my life going to gay clubs, just hanging out with my gay friends because I love gay people. No, never been gay, but I totally wish I was in some way. Cause like dudes,
they're easier to get along with.
They're so easy.
Yeah.
Like if I almost feel like being straight's harder.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But
nowadays maybe not, but okay, hold on. Go back it up. Check this out. So this thing we were talking about, where if you have this baseline level truth of love good, fear bad, everything on top of that is not absolute, right? Maybe some things are more absolute or like closer.
Is there anything else that's absolute?
I don't know.
Like I haven't really thought much about
I don't think so. But think of it this way, right? If you think of it that way, and love good, fear bad, to me, it also nullifies these objections I have with the Old Testament where God kills everyone or commands to kill everyone and do a genocide. Because one thing Jordan Peterson talks about, right, where when you're thinking about good, what is good and what is right or wrong, right? There's the question of what is good right now, but also you have to think of it over time and how it implicates other people, right? So there's multiple dimensions to something that's good. For example, you want to feel good. Okay, well, why don't you just do heroin? You'll feel great. Oh, because later in time, you're not going to feel that good. And it'll cause shit down the road. Maybe you'll get addicted and you'll cause shit for your family and they won't feel good. So like there's consequences across time and laterally across people. So whether something's good or bad for filling the pool with fear or love, right? Sometimes you got to pump fear into the pool to keep so that you can feel more love in later. So it's like, right? So it's a trade. It's like a cold plunge, right? Sometimes you got to eat shit so you can feel better. And I think under this context, thinking of it that way, God massacring and genociding the Amalekites makes sense, because imagine the Amalekite culture, for example, was so wicked and bad that if they would have been allowed to live, they would have not only spread, but their culture of promoting fear and wickedness that's filling the pool with bullshit would have spread too and taken over everything. And let's say God knows that. This universal consciousness is in everyone's consciousness. It's smart enough to know that. And it would say, okay, if we don't just wipe this shit off the map, it's going to fill it with too much fear, right? So we got to wipe the shit. And it's going to cause a lot of fear in the meantime. You're going to kill a lot of innocent people. It's going to suck. But in the overall perspective of filling it with love, this is what we got to do, right? And that's antithetical to a God who's all loving and knows everything and is all powerful, because what a horrible freaking plan if that was your plan.
I mean, if you've read the Old Testament, you know that that's not true. Like you can, but one of the things is like in the Bible, they call it the administrations, and like this was God interacting with a completely different dispensation, or like administration. So now we're in the grace administration, and God chose to act differently now because Jesus died. So that's just, now we have the grace of God, which is really lucky for us.
Yeah.
But it's I think how you said it was really well stated. And I don't really think we disagree on too much. I think we approach it differently, but I think we need to find people who disagree.
Well, I hopefully, depending on who watches this, someone will want to come debate it or like talk about it, because I don't know, dude, speaking of those pings, this morning when you sent me that voice memo, like, bro, I heard myself in it, bro. Like, I was like, bro, I had that exact experience. And I think we're not alone. I think I think what's happening is there's a cultural counterculture. There's a counterculture that's going back to Christianity. There's been a meaning crisis. We've been secular for a long time. It isn't working good. There's a meaning crisis, and people are en masse going back to the church and back to religion, right? People are searching for something. What I think happening is people like us are exploring this and going, this traditional, they're going into a Catholic church, they're going into a Christian church, and they're listening to the preacher, and they're having the same questions we have. They're going, this can't be like fully right. Like, this is crazy. Like, cool. Like, they can sense this shit that's connecting, but
they're pinging.
But it's like, dude, this can't be it, right? So people just like us are looking for answers and looking for alternatives and trying to make sense of this. And I think a lot of them are finding this theory and this idea, which has been hiding in plain sight. Like, at the end of the day, this is basically what Jesus said, right? This is similar to what the Buddha said, right? And when you get into the Eastern traditions of meditation and oneness and like all this, like that's the same shit, bro. It's like meditating deep in your consciousness, connecting with God, which is your consciousness, which is you. It's all the same shit. And I think it's amalgamating to this new 21st century religion of oneness or God consciousness. I've heard it called Jesus consciousness, God consciousness, whatever. But I think it's a thing, bro. Dead ass. I think it's a brand new big thing that's happening. Yeah.
I have to sign off, so I want to say something, and then we'll end it because I gotta go watch the baby. But don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, if I was gonna encourage anybody to do something in this arena, it's like, for one, keep an open mind, but also two, it's like, if you do resonate with the universal consciousness theory and idea, then it's like, why wouldn't you want to connect with other people who are also in the pursuit of truth, which is not necessarily guaranteed that you're going to meet everybody at church that is, but a lot of people that go to church are looking for truth actively. And so sharing ideas and being a part of a community, going to church, listening from somebody who is not just like in being a pastor for the wrong reasons, but somebody who genuinely wants to just like share their life experience and their relationship to God and how they've gone through their life, and it might be beneficial. I go every week and I feel fed by that. And it's like, I don't just take everything at face value. Obviously, I'm a pretty independent thinker, but I enjoy being around other people who are also like, huh. And what I've found is, in a good church, a lot of people are just like opening their Bibles, or they're praying, or I'm having great conversations with people where they're like, yeah, it doesn't all make sense. And I'm like, yeah. And then I'll share some of the stuff we talked about. They'll share back. And it like creates, even if you're talking to someone who's a little bit more closed-minded, it at least engages that muscle in that conversation of like trying to get to the basic reality, truth of like, what are we doing here? And what's our relationship to God? So don't be afraid to go to church. Also, don't be afraid to keep an open mind and like trust yourself.
Yeah. Beware of dogma.
Beware of dogma. But also, like, community is great.
Community is great. That's awesome. Yeah, thanks, bro. Thanks for the combo. Yeah, I could do 5 more hours with you, and we'll have to do it again. But that's all super interesting. And yeah, thanks for the time, and we'll see you on the next one. All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. I know it's a little crazy, and we were kind of all over the place, but that's how I do it. That's how I like to do it. Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments. And if you look in the description, you will find some resources to explore this universal consciousness idea more. I was turned on to it by this guy called Abke. I'm skeptical of him. He kind of seems like a new age guru, he gets a little weird and out there. And I've just come across him, so I don't really know what to think. But he kind of champions a lot of these ideas, and he's a good source if you want to just look into it more. There will also be a link to book a video call with me if you just want to discuss any of this or debate this. And I'd also be opening to having you on my channel to talk about it if you want, or debate it or something like that. I love doing conversation. The last thing is that I'm not really on social media these days, so if you want to keep up to date with me, click the link in the description. That is my Substack. I do updates on there, and it's the best way to stay up to date with me. Basically, it's free. You put in your email, and you'll get my updates right in your inbox, or what I write and what I do. And yeah, goes to your email. So anyways, thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one. Peace.